Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm in Indonesia because after 40 years of teaching Buddhism, I've decided to basically retire from public teaching. So I intend to return to Australia, which is my home country, and sort of go into semi-permanent retirement, spending more of my time meditating, and also I want to do some writing. When I first became a monk, I had no intention of writing, never written an essay or an article before, but for one reason or another I started writing and people liked what I wrote. So I ended up writing about 27 books on Buddhism and about 1,000 articles. All of my books have been translated into at least one language. Some have been translated into several languages. One of them has been translated into 36 languages. I don't think my books are fantastic, but they're not bad, and people seem to like them. And one thing that I always try to do in my books is not to tell the reader what the Buddha said or what the Buddha taught, but to quote from the Tipitaka, the Buddha scriptures, what the Buddha said. So it's very common that Christians will read their Bible. It's not uncommon to meet Muslims who can read the Quran, but it's very uncommon for Buddhists to read the Buddhist Bible. And I think the consequences of this is that instead of looking to what the Buddha said, we become more familiar with what this monk said the Buddha said, or this writer said the Buddha said. And sometimes they report the Buddha's words accurately, but quite often they don't, because sometimes they haven't read what the Buddha said. So one thing that I've always tried to do is to, as much as possible, base what I say on the Tipitaka, the Buddhist scriptures, the words of the Buddha. And the more that I read those, the more relevant they seem. Despite the fact that the Buddha was teaching 2,500 years ago, many of the things he said sound rather modern. They are in harmony with modern concepts, modern ideas. And that makes me think that whoever the Buddha was, he was far ahead of his time. 1,000 years ahead of his time. And that suggests that he had a very remarkable depth of wisdom. So it's interesting that we Buddhists have this priceless treasure, the words of a profoundly wise person, and yet we hardly ever bother to read what he said. And the tradition in Buddhism is that people don't read it. The tradition is chanting and bowing to the Buddha and giving food to the monks. They're important. But unless that is backed up with a good knowledge of Buddhism, it's useless. It's not unusual to be approached by a Christian who wants to tell you about his religion. I don't know if that happens to you, but in Singapore, as soon as they see this, wow, they come to me straight away and they say they want to know about Buddhism, but really they want to try to tell me about Christianity. And I appreciate that they usually know their religion quite well. Ask her Are Buddhists a question about Buddhism? They don't know. This is a very sad situation. So what I have tried to do in my 40 years as a monk is to try to encourage people to become familiar with what the Buddha taught. So they're just some thoughts about my experience as a monk. Anyway, I've been told that this afternoon you would like to ask me questions about Buddhism. So I am making myself available, and anything that you would like to ask on any question, I will do my best to answer. Now, I don't know everything about Buddhism. I know almost everything about Buddhism, but not everything. So maybe I can't answer your questions, but I will do my best to do so. So I hand the floor over to you. If you would like to ask me anything about Buddhism, please, don't be shy. I know you are shy, but anything at all. The more controversial, the better. That wakes people up. Here I am.
Namo Buddhaya, Bante. My name is Julia. I went to the public talk the other day on Thursday, and I don't have any questions the other day, but I do have a few questions today.
Now I'm in trouble.
Yeah. What is my first question is what is Buddhist view on different religion marriage? Different religion marriage.
I see.
Oh, yeah. And okay. And this is a simple question. Another question. Question number 2. I might have read some of the suttas. It tells about how to Mahamangala Sutta is about blessing and stuff, and but it never says about friends, meaning of friends. Okay, and then the third one, I think I can combine the third and the fourth one, which it says about ego and how to face people that is trying to rob your ego. And rob, yeah. And then how to cultivate it, because it's negative and it comes out as a negative energy, I think, and how to make it, how to work around with it, actually. Thank you.
You're very greedy, 3 in 1. So the first question is about two people of different religions marrying, is that they have some things in common. So they like the look of their partner, maybe they share some similar interests, but they may have different religious beliefs. So I can't see why that should cause a problem, as long as they have another thing in common, is that they are tolerant of people with different opinions. So if they both have that in common, that is, well, on this matter, you do your thing, I'll do mine. Why should there be a problem? Now, some religions really insist very strongly that their approach or that their beliefs become dominant in a society, sometimes in a relationship. So if that's the case, chances are it's not going to work. So if somebody changes their religion when they really don't want to, just to please their partner, I find it very strange. I would prefer you lie, tell a lie, lie to yourself and lie to others that you accept my religion, than you honestly practice your own religion. In other words, I don't mind you being fake as long as you pretend to accept my religion. Now, I think that's a very bad foundation for a long-term relationship. But where that is not the case, I can't see why there should be problems. Now, we have to take into account another issue, and that is sooner or later, children will come along. And the religion of the children will become an issue. So my feeling is, once again, before you tie the knot, before the wedding ceremony, you have to sit down and honestly talk about and make a decision what's going to happen there. Are they going to be of this religion or that religion, or are we going to leave it for them to decide for themselves? And then you have to stick to that agreement. And once again, if you do that, I can't see why there should be problems. Now, I don't know what the situation is here in Indonesia, but I know in Singapore this often creates problems, where one partner demands that the other partner accept their religion. This usually happens with Christians, actually. And I know of at least 2 relationships which broke up over this issue. So, getting married is a big step in a person's life. Sort it out, talk about it, and make decisions before you tie the knot. And hopefully each person will abide by their agreement and there won't be any problems. That's that. You know, this is a wonderful book. I know, I wrote it. Okay? One whole chapter is about friends and friendship. Have you read it?
That one not yet.
Okay, that's why you asked that question. If you'd have read the book, you wouldn't have to ask that question. Okay? So of all human relationships, the Buddha talks about friendship more than any other relationship. Why? Because every relationship should evolve into a friendship. Your husband or your wife should become your best friend. You should have a friendship relationship with your kids, particularly by the time they're 18, 19 or 20. You treat them like other adults. It would be really wonderful if you had a genuine friendship with your neighbors or the people that you work with. And this is why the Buddha talks about friendship more than any other relationship. And the Buddha talks about, if you read the book, 3 types or levels of friendship. He talks about ordinary friends. You know, they're people you meet, you have something in common with, you chat, etc. But your relationship's not deep. Then there's a special Pali word for that level of friendship. Then he talks about what we would, I don't know how you would say in Indonesian, but a bosom friend. Somebody, you really love that person. Okay? Now it quite often happens that those type of relationships are the same-sex relationships. That is, 2 men, maybe they went to school together, maybe they were in the army together, maybe they worked together, and they really have a strong bond with each other. Or 2 women. And the reason for that is that in such relationships, sex usually doesn't come into it. Because when sex comes into it, well, things become complicated. Okay. So that's a bosom friend. I know my mother. She had a friend when she was at school. And when my mother was very sick, when she was 85, that friend was still there. My mother's friendship with that woman lasted longer than her friendship with her husband, my father. Okay, so that's the second type of friendship the Buddha talked about. And the third type of friendship the Buddha talked about was Kalyana Mitta or Kalyana Mitra. This means a spiritual friend. This is a special type of relationship where the main thing you have in common with that person is your common commitment to the Dhamma. Now, the best type of Kalyana Mitra would be your husband or your wife. You both have an interest in the Dhamma. That would be fantastic. But it can be other types of relationships too. Read the book. Then, if you read this book, all the sutras that the Buddha talks about friendship, if you look in the index at the back, almost everything the Buddha said about friendship. I couldn't put everything in because there's so much. Okay? So I only put some of the more important suttas on that subject. And the third question was, if somebody tries to, what was the word you use? Rob you of your ego. What does that mean? What do you mean by that? Giving compliments? I love people giving me compliments. That's...
Like, you know, when they're not sincere with...
Okay, righto.
You want to reply, but you see that they're not sincere.
How does that rob you of your ego? How does that rob you of your ego? So when you said having your ego robbed, I would have thought of something like somebody putting you down all of the time, depreciating you, maybe humiliating you in front of your friends. That's what I would have thought of. What are you referring to?
I think something that you mentioned is more...
Okay.
That brings up something interesting.
So I know more what you want to say than you do. Okay? Righto. Yeah. Everybody has a self-image. Before you get rid of your ego, you've got to develop your ego. People who have a well-developed sense of their own value are usually healthy people. Now, in the world we have people who have got overdeveloped egos. One of them just became President of the United States. And then you have other people who have got a crippled ego. That is, they think they're no good. They think they're of no value. They don't wait for other people to put them down. They put themselves down. You get people like this. So that's not very healthy either. The person who's got an overdeveloped ego usually has no empathy towards others. They are only interested in others if they can get something from them. We all know people like that. And these other people, they are usually profoundly unhappy. And that's not good either. People who are unhappy usually make other people unhappy. So what does it mean to have a well-developed, a healthy ego? Well, one thing is self-confidence. Another thing is all of the good emotions like empathy, kindness, wanting to help yourself, but at the same time giving regard to helping others too. Knowing yourself well, being honest about your good traits and being objective about your shortcomings. And everybody's got shortcomings. These would be the signs of a healthy, well-developed, balanced ego. Now, the first of these is self-confidence. If you have an intelligent self-confidence, I maintain that other people can't put you down. You won't accept it. And if you're in a position to do so, you will keep your distance from such people. They are not helpful.